Alien Earth is back this week with episode 3, and with it being titled Metamorphosis, which is the process of transformation from an immature form to an adult form. We saw that taking place across many of the different characters throughout this episode. Whether it be with Nibs questioning not only who she is, but what she is. Kirsh taking on the responsibility of thinking he's in charge and it looking like he's starting to view himself as a higher species than a human. Or even poor old Joe being treated like a fresh body on a plate where parts are just going to be taken from him, ultimately making him a cyborg in the process. This was an episode that followed on well from the first two, and by focusing on the supporting characters, we got to see the many different complexes that are going to be present throughout the remainder of the season. So with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Here is Alien Earth Episode 3 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. What's going on with Nibs? Even though Nibs didn't have a ton of screen time in this episode, what we did see with her was that after coming face to face with Species 64, almost having it leap on her face and being faced with what would have originally been death, she was questioning the transferring process that occurred, why she couldn't keep her name and what exactly she now was. It's quite easy to forget that these hybrids are children's minds inside of synthetic bodies that are made to look like adults, so of course she's going to have many questions about what's going on. Not that long ago she was terminally ill and was on the cusp of death, and now here she was, looking completely different and with no answers about who she essentially was. Right at the end of the episode, Nibs was looking at herself in the mirror and she had a flashback to asking, when do we get to go home? And she was told, you don't. Showing that she was missing the life that she had before because at least she knew who she was and she knew who her family were. Her scene concluded with her poking a finger into her eye, which we could see wasn't an actual eye, and it made me think back to right at the beginning of the episode when she saw the alien creature in the jar. And with her eye not being the human one from before and it being synthetic, I feel like when looking back at that first scene, she was watching the eye and thinking about how she was just as much of an alien as what they were, except they were basically being kept in a bigger jar. Everybody's transition went pretty smoothly, but it seems like we're seeing her mind having some kind of friction and resistance to the body and the environment that she's in. So I wonder if she's either going to reach breaking points and turn on those that are around her because she'll be missing the life that she had before, or if she'll look to find a way to return home. The sad reality of this is that even if she does something to destroy herself, Kavalier will just reboot her and get her to switch back on. One of the selling points was how these hybrids could never die, and Curly even said that in this episode. So Nibs is now pretty much imprisoned within a body that she doesn't want for eternity. Kirsh's superiority complex. One of the most interesting arcs in this episode was Kirsh. He took center stage as the specimens were being collected, and there was a line that Kavalier said to him, which to me shows the direction that the character's going to go in. Kavalier said, I thought you were supposed to be better than a man, but all I hear are excuses. The look that he had afterwards showed that it went to his head, and he was almost going to prove to Kavalier that he was better than man. There were a few discussions in this episode as well about who looks after the hybrids and whether it was Dame Sylvia, Kavalier, or Kirsh. And in seeing Smee and Slightly going behind Kirsh when Morrow said, is he your parent? It showed that Kirsh was the one that was in charge. Kirsh even looked at Smee and Slightly together with their arms around each other and was looking on as if he was a proud parent. So there's definitely something that's going to occur there. The opening shot of the first episode essentially was describing to us which species was going to be the superior one, the cyborgs, the synthetics, or the hybrids. Humans aren't mentioned in this, so this makes me think that Kirsh is going to potentially look to overthrow Kavalier, and one reason he might do that is down to the way that he acts towards him. During this episode, Kirsh started to operate on one of those Xeno eggs, and he took out the core of it and bonded it with Joe's lung in a testing tube in order to see how it reacted. Almost treating Joe like a disposable person that they were just going to take parts from and replace with robotic parts, ultimately turning him into a cyborg. However, it feels like this could be part of Kirsh's wider plan of potentially looking to take control. When Kavalier was around the Xeno egg, Kirsh pushed him away from it and said, the creature must have gestated inside of a human host, like you. And when he said, like you, his eyes were almost burning into Kavalier's. It felt like he was undervaluing the life of a human, and this was a response to the way that Kavalier spoke to him earlier on in insinuating that he was supposed to be better than man, when, in this instance, Kirsh was. In Kirsh taking the body parts of Joe and seeing how the species reacted to them, I wonder if he's going to eventually use them on Kavalier, showing that he's actually going to be in total control and the cyborgs in his eyes are the more dominant species. I don't really get the impression that Kirsh likes Kavalier that much, but then again, who does? So this could be a plausible theory. The very fact that he walked past a passed out Wendy on the floor at the end showed the determination that he had and the actual lack of regard that he had for Wendy, Kavalier's favourite. All of the others have been following Kirsh's orders, but she hasn't, so I think there's going to be a divide that forms between them. Mr. Morrow's quest to Kavalier. There was a riddle in this episode that Morrow said to Slightly, and it once again connected to the whole idea of which species was more superior than the other. Morrow is a cyborg, and we've seen him almost become obsessed with the mission that he was sent on 65 years ago, where he was tasked with collecting the specimens. Hence why he's determined to bring them back to Yutani. There was a sense of guilt that he felt over what happened to his crew and the fact that he sacrificed their lives for the purpose of the mission, something that the humans on board most likely wouldn't have done. And with the guilt that he felt, which he described as the worst parts of man, he uploaded it onto the core database and erased it from him, which essentially allowed him to feel more free from the events that happened. Mr. Morrow essentially gave away his humanity to become a programmed worker for Yutani's cause. Morrow pretty much lost his family by joining this mission, as he told himself how he'd been gone for a lifetime and that everybody that he knew was dead, meaning that he had no home. He spoke of a daughter that he once had and the memories of her, but you could see the pain that he was in when he was thinking about her. Mr. Morrow is a threat to Kavalier, as he's going to use Slightly and the fact that he's his friend to most likely penetrate security. However, Kirsh could be the biggest threat to Kavalier, he just doesn't know it yet. What happened to Wendy during the ending? To be fair, the scene with Wendy and the Xeno was probably my favourite of the episode. Seeing the cut-up alien on the floor with Wendy standing there with the blade was just epic, and it looked so cool. Wendy spent most of this episode on the transferring table, where it seemed like they were trying to piece her mind back together following her being damaged after the fight. When she woke up, it was the sound of the aliens chirping that she followed, but there's a part of me that's questioning if she ever left the table. Dame Sylvia never saw her leave or heard her get off the table. Neither of the hybrids noticed her in the room, and surely they'd have been able to have heard her. Kirsh didn't notice her when she fell to the ground and screamed, and nobody looked when the doors opened as well. So I wonder if there's more than meets the eye with this. But you never know, they could have just been too focused on the job. At the end of episode 2, we saw that she was able to hear the face huggers inside of the eggs, and it was a sound that only she could hear. During the closing moments of the episode, that same thing happened again. She wasn't only hearing the creatures, but she was feeling the pain that they were in as they were being dragged out of the egg and ripped apart. In terms of thematically, I wonder if this is connected to the fact that they're both pretty much cut from the same cloth, being kept inside of Prodigy HQ, not allowed to leave, being tested on and trapped for eternity. One is alien, the other is hybrid, and their captor is the common enemy. Wendy can hear them because of the frequency that nobody else can lock into. We don't know yet if they can communicate, but I imagine with time we'll eventually find out. My review of the episode. I thought this was a strong episode of not only the show, but television itself. I think this is probably FX's best show since Shogun. It was partway through this episode where I was watching it and I just thought how they haven't had one look this good in so long. You can just tell that there was so much effort put into the visuals that this one got. Some standout moments for me in this episode were the fight between Xeno and Wendy, although Joe was acting a bit stupid for the most part of it. I did just wonder why the Xeno wasn't killing Joe and was trapping him and then chasing him. I found that plot armor a bit strange, but the sight of Wendy holding the blade covered in acid was such a cool shot. I also really liked the guitar riff that was playing as Wendy and Joe were being brought in. It just had this 80s type feel to it, and one that just encapsulated the mood and feel of what we were watching. Somber, but also uplifting. Kavalier got what he wanted in retrieving the specimens, but there was the equivalent of death in front of us, so they nailed the tone. I also liked the fact that when the specimens were brought in, the mood changed completely, and it transformed into this ominous dark piece that was just filled with dread. Kavalier and Curly is an avenue that I think is also going to be really interesting to explore. Curly seems to have this jealousy of Wendy, and it looks like she's going to do all that she can to try and be better than her because she wants to be Kavalier's favourite. I also thought the introduction of Nibs' story of not quite knowing how to feel about being trapped inside of a body that she didn't want and wanted to revert back to who she was before was a great plot to introduce. She's going to lose the plot, and her silence quite literally spoke 1,000 words in this episode, so I'm intrigued to see where that's going to go. This show has so many good arcs embedded within it that are just slowly unfolding in front of our eyes and are all connecting into the wider theme of the show. What defines a life, how valuable it is, and who's really in charge. So, there you have it, Alien Earth Episode 3, Ending Explained.